The cards hit the table with a sound that would seal Catherine Miller's fate, and her father's trembling hands revealed what she already knew in her heart. They had lost everything. The smoky back room of the Silver Dollar Saloon in Abilene, Kansas, reeked of whiskey and desperation on that sweltering August evening in 1874, and Catherine stood frozen in the doorway, watching her father's face crumble as Marcus Thornton, the wealthiest and cruelest man in 3 counties, smiled like a snake that had just cornered its prey. She was 22 years old, and in the span of 5 minutes, she learned that her father had wagered not just their small ranch, not just their cattle, but her hand in marriage to settle a debt of $5,000, a sum so staggering it made her knees weak. "Please, Mr. Thornton," her father begged, his weathered face slick with sweat. "Give me another month. I can get the money together, I swear it." Thornton leaned back in his chair, his expensive suit a stark contrast to the rough cowboy attire of everyone else in the room. He was 45, with cold gray eyes and a reputation for destroying anyone who crossed him. "We had an agreement, Miller. You said if you lost this hand, your daughter becomes my wife. I have witnesses." He gestured to the 3 men seated around the table, all of whom worked for him, and nodded in unison. Catherine's voice cut through the tension. "I am not property to be gambled away." She stepped into the lamplight, her dark hair pulled back in a simple braid, her calico dress dusty from the day's work. Her green eyes flashed with fury and fear in equal measure. Thornton's gaze slid over her with possessive satisfaction. "According to the law, your father's debts are his family's debts, and he signed a contract." He pulled a wrinkled paper from his vest pocket. "You will marry me in 3 days, or I will have the sheriff seize your property and throw your father in jail for fraud. I might also mention that I own the bank, the general store, and most of the surrounding land. You will find no help in this town." The ride home was silent except for the creaking of their wagon wheels and her father's occasional sobs. Catherine could not even look at him. Thomas Miller had always had a weakness for cards and whiskey, but this betrayal cut deeper than anything she could have imagined. Her mother had died 2 years ago from fever, and Catherine had worked herself to exhaustion keeping their small ranch running, tending the garden, caring for their handful of cattle, all while her father slowly drank away their savings. "Kathy, I am so sorry," he finally whispered as their modest ranch house came into view under the moonlight. "I thought I could win it back. He was cheating, I know he was, but I cannot prove it." 3 days, she said, her voice hollow. "I have 3 days before I become the wife of a man I despise." That night, Catherine lay awake in her small room, staring at the ceiling and trying to formulate a plan. She could run, but where would she go? She had no money, no relatives, and Thornton's reach extended far beyond Abilene. She could refuse, but then her father would go to prison and they would lose everything anyway. Every path led to darkness. The next morning, Catherine rode into town to buy supplies, hoping to clear her head. The streets of Abilene bustled with activity. Cowboys driving cattle, merchants hawking their wares, women in bonnets gossiping outside the millinery. She tied her horse outside the general store and was about to enter when she heard a commotion down the street. A crowd had gathered near the livery stable, and curiosity drew her closer. In the center of the crowd stood a tall cowboy, probably around 26 or 27, with sun-bronzed skin and dark blonde hair that needed a trim. He wore worn denim trousers, a faded blue shirt, and a hat that had seen better days. What caught Catherine's attention was not his appearance, though he was undeniably handsome, but the way he was calmly facing down 3 of Thornton's ranch hands. "I said the horse is not for sale," the cowboy stated, his voice calm but firm with a slight Texas drawl. One of Thornton's men, a brute named Pike, sneered. "Mr. Thornton wants that Palomino, and what Mr. Thornton wants he gets. Name your price, drifter." "I do not care what Thornton wants." "The horse belonged to my brother, and she is not for sale at any price." The cowboy's hand rested casually near the gun on his hip, but there was nothing casual about the steel in his blue eyes. Pike reached for his own weapon, but before he could draw, the cowboy had his gun out, cocked and aimed, all in one fluid motion that was faster than anything Catherine had ever seen. The crowd gasped and stepped back. "I have had a long ride and a longer week," the cowboy said quietly. "I am not looking for trouble, but I will finish it if you start it. Now, I suggest you boys go back to Thornton and tell him there are still some things in this world his money cannot buy." The three men hesitated, then slowly backed away, muttering threats. The cowboy holstered his gun and turned to lead his beautiful Palomino mare toward the livery, and that was when his eyes met Catherine's. For just a moment, something passed between them, a recognition, perhaps, of two souls carrying heavy burdens. Then he tipped his hat politely and continued on his way. Catherine found herself following him, though she could not say why. "That was either very brave or very foolish," she called out. He glanced back with a slight smile. "I have been accused of both, ma'am." Up close, she could see the weariness in his face, the dust of long travel on his clothes. "Name is Cole Davidson. I just rode in from Texas. Catherine Miller." She hesitated, then added, "You should know that Marcus Thornton is not a man who forgets. You made enemies today." Cole shrugged as he began unsaddling his horse. "Would not be the first time. I am just passing through anyway, looking to earn some money for supplies before I head west to Colorado. My brother and I were supposed to make that trip together, but he died 3 months ago. Fever." His voice tightened on the last word, and Catherine saw the grief he carried. "I am sorry for your loss," she said softly. "Thank you, ma'am. And if you do not mind my saying, you look like someone carrying troubles of your own." Catherine laughed bitterly. "Is it that obvious?" Before she could stop herself, the whole story came pouring out: her father's gambling, the debt, Thornton's demand, the wedding set for 2 days from now. Cole listened without interrupting, his hands working methodically to brush down his horse, but she could see his jaw tightening with anger. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, $5,000. An impossible sum. I would need to work for 10 years to save that much, and Thornton knows it. Cole set down the brush and looked at her directly. "What if someone paid it off?" Catherine shook her head. "No one in this town would dare cross Thornton. He owns everything and everyone." "I am not from this town." Cole walked over to his saddlebag and pulled out a worn leather pouch. He opened it to reveal a stack of bills and gold coins. "My brother and I spent 5 years working cattle drives, saving every penny for a ranch of our own. This is his half and mine, about $6,000, enough to pay your father's debt and then some." Catherine stared at the money, then at Cole, her heart pounding. "You do not even know me." "Why would you do this?" "Because I know what it is like to feel trapped, because I know what it is like to lose someone you love, and because no woman should be forced to marry a man like Thornton." He met her eyes steadily. "But I have a condition." Her stomach dropped. "What condition?" "That you use your freedom to live the life you choose, not the life someone else decides for you. I am not asking for anything in return, Catherine. I'm just asking that you promise me you will not let fear make your decisions anymore." Tears sprang to Catherine's eyes. "I do not understand." "You would give up your brother's dream, your dream, for a stranger?" Cole's expression softened. "My brother always said the measure of a man is not what he keeps, but what he gives away when it matters most. Maybe this is what the money was meant for all along. Maybe this is how I honor his memory." Catherine could not speak. She wanted to refuse, wanted to tell him she could not accept such an enormous sacrifice, but the alternative was marrying Thornton, and the thought made her physically ill. "If you do this," she finally whispered, "I will find a way to pay you back, every penny." "I swear it." "No need for swearing. Just promise me you will take that freedom and do something good with it." "I promise." They went to the bank together, Cole carrying the leather pouch. The bank manager, a nervous man named Whitley who clearly feared Thornton, was shocked when Cole counted out $5,000 in cash and demanded a receipt showing Thomas Miller's debt paid in full. Word spread through town like wildfire. Within an hour, Everyone in Abilene knew that a mysterious cowboy had paid off Catherine Miller's father's gambling debt. Thornton arrived at the bank before they left, his face purple with rage. "This is outrageous. We had an agreement." Cole stood between Thornton and Catherine. "An agreement signed under duress is not legally binding. The debt is paid. The lady is free. Unless you want to argue the point outside, in which case I am happy to oblige." Thornton looked at Cole's gun, then at the crowd of townspeople who had gathered, watching with open curiosity. He was a bully and a cheat, but he was not stupid enough to draw on a man who was clearly faster. "This is not over," he hissed at Catherine. "Your father still owes me for other debts, and I will collect." "Actually," Cole said, pulling out another stack of bills, "I took the liberty of checking with Mr. Whitley here. Thomas Miller had an additional $800 in outstanding debts around town. I have paid those as well. Your name was not on any of them, Thornton. Seems like you made up those other debts just now." The crowd murmured, and Thornton realized he had been trapped in his own lie. His face went from purple to white, and then he turned and stormed out of the bank, slamming the door so hard the windows rattled. Catherine's father was waiting at the ranch when they arrived, his face haggard. When Catherine told him what Cole had done, Thomas Miller broke down completely, sobbing with relief and shame. "I do not deserve this mercy," he said. "I do not deserve either of you." "No, you do not," Catherine agreed, her voice hard. "But I am not doing this for you. I am doing this for Mama's memory and for my own future. And if you ever gamble again, if you ever touch another card or another bottle, I will leave and you will never see me again. Do you understand?" Her father nodded, unable to meet her eyes. "I understand. I swear on your mother's grave I am done with all of it." Cole had remained silent during this exchange, standing awkwardly near the door. Catherine turned to him. "You should stay for supper. It is the least we can offer." "I do not want to impose. You just gave up your life savings for us. Supper is not an imposition." The meal was simple: cornbread, beans, and salt pork, but Catherine found herself enjoying Cole's company. He told them stories of cattle drives, of stampedes and river crossings, of cowboys and cattle barons. He spoke of his brother Jack with evident love and lingering grief. Catherine learned that Cole was 27, that he had been born in Tennessee but raised in Texas after his parents died of cholera. He and Jack had been inseparable, working together, dreaming together, saving together for a ranch they would never share. After supper, Catherine walked Cole out to the barn where his horse was stabled. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. "What will you do now?" she asked. "Without the money for your ranch," Cole leaned against the fence, looking out at the prairie. "I suppose I will do what I have always done. Work, save, keep moving. Maybe Colorado is not in my future anymore, but there are other places, other dreams. You could stay here." The words came out before Catherine could stop them, and she felt her cheeks flush. "I mean, we could use help on the ranch. We cannot pay much, but you would have a place to stay, food, and whatever we can spare. It is not much, but—" "I would like that," Cole interrupted, a smile spreading across his face. "I would like that very much." Over the following weeks, Cole proved to be everything Catherine could have hoped for in a ranch hand. He repaired the barn roof, fixed the broken corral fence, helped her father round up their scattered cattle, and worked from sunrise to sunset without complaint. But more than that, he brought a sense of peace to the ranch that had been missing since Catherine's mother died. He made her father laugh with his stories, helped Catherine with the heavy chores she had always struggled with alone, and treated them both with unfailing kindness and respect. Catherine found herself watching him when she thought he was not looking, noticing the way he gentled a skittish horse with patient hands, the way he always offered to help before being asked, the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled. She had never felt this way before, this strange mixture of comfort and excitement, of wanting to be near someone and feeling nervous when she was. One evening, as they worked together in the garden, pulling weeds in the fading light, Cole said quietly, "You know, I did not tell you the whole truth back in town." Catherine's hands stilled. What do you mean? When I said I paid your debt because I knew what it was like to feel trapped. That was true, but it was not the only reason. He looked at her, and in his eyes she saw vulnerability and hope. From the moment I saw you in that crowd, something in me recognized something in you. I cannot explain it any better than that. I knew I would do anything to keep you from being forced into that marriage. Catherine's heart was racing. Cole, you barely knew me. I know, it makes no sense. But sometimes the heart knows things the mind has not figured out yet. He reached over and gently took her hand, his calloused fingers warm against hers. These past weeks, working beside you, talking with you, seeing your strength and your kindness, Catherine, I am falling in love with you. Maybe I have been since that first day. She should pull her hand away. She should tell him it was too soon, too complicated, that she needed time after everything that had happened. But all of that would be a lie. I am falling in love with you too, she whispered. I tried not to. I tried to tell myself you were just being kind, that what I felt was just gratitude. But it is more than that, so much more. Cole stood and drew her to her feet, his hands framing her face with infinite gentleness. May I kiss you? Yes, his kiss was soft and sweet, tasting of possibility and promise. Catherine's arms went around his neck, and for the first time since her mother's death, she felt truly, completely happy. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were smiling. I have nothing to offer you, Cole said. No ranch, no fortune, just myself and whatever future we can build together. That is all I want, Catherine replied. That is everything. They told her father the next morning over breakfast. Thomas Miller, who had been sober since the day Cole paid his debts, looked from one to the other and then smiled. The first genuine smile Catherine had seen on his face in years. Cole Davidson, you have given me back my daughter's future and my own self-respect. If you want to marry her, you have my blessing, though I suspect Catherine would marry you whether I approved or not. You are right about that, Catherine said, but she was smiling. They were married a month later, in September of 1874, in a small ceremony at the church in Abilene. The whole town turned out, partly out of genuine affection for Catherine, who had always been kind to everyone, and partly out of curiosity about the cowboy who had stood up to Marcus Thornton. The only person not in attendance was Thornton himself, who had been noticeably quiet since the day Cole paid off the debt. Catherine wore her mother's wedding dress, carefully altered to fit her frame. Cole wore new trousers and a borrowed jacket, and when the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, he kissed her with such joy that the congregation broke into applause and laughter. The reception was held at the ranch, with neighbors bringing food and music. Catherine danced with her new husband under the stars, feeling like she was floating. Are you happy? Cole whispered in her ear. Happier than I ever thought possible, she replied. As the weeks turned into months, Catherine and Cole settled into married life. They worked the ranch together, and with Cole's knowledge of cattle and ranching, they began to turn a real profit for the first time in years. Thomas Miller kept his promise about gambling and drinking, throwing himself into the ranch work with renewed purpose. Catherine sometimes caught him watching her and Cole with an expression of wonder and regret, as if he could not quite believe he had almost destroyed everything and yet had been given a second chance. Winter came, harsh and cold, and Catherine discovered she was pregnant. When she told Cole, he picked her up and spun her around despite her laughing protests, his face radiant with joy. A baby, he kept saying. We are going to have a baby. You are not disappointed, she asked. I know you wanted to save money to eventually buy more land. Catherine, you and this baby are worth more than all the land in Kansas. He placed his hand gently on her still flat stomach. This is the dream I did not know I had. Their son was born in June of 1875 during a thunderstorm that shook the rafters of the ranch house. Cole paced outside the bedroom door while the midwife attended to Catherine, and when he finally heard the baby's first cry, he burst into the room with tears streaming down his face. Catherine, exhausted but glowing, held their son and said, I want to name him Jack, after your brother. Cole could not speak for several moments, overcome with emotion. Finally, he managed. He would have been so honored. Thank you. Little Jack Davidson was a healthy, loud baby with his father's blue eyes and his mother's dark hair. Thomas Miller, now a doting grandfather, was completely transformed by the baby's arrival. He carved toys, sang lullabies he remembered from Catherine's childhood, and often fell asleep in his chair with Jack in his arms. As Jack grew from infant to toddler, the ranch continued to prosper. Cole's reputation as an honest, skilled rancher spread, and they began buying cattle from other ranchers, expanding their herd. Catherine kept the books, managed the household, and cared for Jack, all while helping with the ranch work when she could. It was hard, exhausting labor, but she had never been happier. One afternoon in the spring of 1877, when Jack was almost 2 years old, a stranger rode up to the ranch. He was an older man, well-dressed, with a badge on his vest that identified him as a federal marshal. Catherine, who had been hanging laundry, felt a chill of fear. Had something happened? Was Cole in trouble? The marshal dismounted and removed his hat politely. "Ma'am, I am looking for Cole Davidson. Is he here?" "He is out checking the herd," Catherine said carefully. "May I ask what this is about?" "Nothing bad, ma'am. I have some news he will want to hear." Cole returned an hour later, and the marshal repeated his request. They all gathered in the parlor, and the marshal pulled out some papers. "Mr. Davidson, I have been looking for you for several months." "It concerns your brother, Jack Davidson." Cole stiffened. "My brother is dead." "Yes, sir, I know. I am sorry for your loss. But before he died, your brother filed a homestead claim on 160 acres near Pueblo, Colorado. He listed you as his heir. The claim has been approved and the land is legally yours. Additionally, he had $500 in a bank account in Denver that he never mentioned to anyone. That is also yours now." Cole stared at the papers as if they might disappear. "Jack never told me about any of this." "According to the bank manager, your brother wanted it to be a surprise. He was planning to tell you after you completed your last cattle drive together." The marshal's voice was gentle. "I am sorry it took so long to find you. The paperwork got lost for a while, and then I heard you might be in this area." After the marshal left, Cole sat in silence, holding the deed to the land in Colorado and the bank receipt. Catherine sat beside him, her hand in his. "He was planning our future," Cole finally said, his voice thick with emotion. "Even when I thought we had nothing, Jack was building something for us." "He loved you very much," Catherine said softly. "I used that money to save you," Cole said. "I have no regrets about that. But now, Jack has given us a chance anyway. He is still taking care of me, even from beyond." Thomas Miller, who had been listening from the doorway, spoke up. "You should go to Colorado, take that land, build the ranch Jack wanted you to have." Cole looked at Catherine. "What do you think?" She thought of the ranch they had worked so hard to build here, of the neighbors they had come to know, of the life they had created. But she also thought of Cole's dreams, of the brother he had lost, of new opportunities and fresh starts. "I think," she said slowly, "that Jack gave you this gift for a reason, and I think Colorado sounds like an adventure." They spent the next few months preparing for the move. They sold their cattle and equipment, said goodbye to neighbors who had become friends, and packed up their belongings. Thomas Miller, now 60 years old and looking healthier than he had in a decade, surprised them by announcing he wanted to stay in Kansas. "This ranch is where I met your mother," he told Catherine. "Where you were born, where she is buried, I cannot leave that. But you young folks, you have your whole lives ahead of you. Go build something beautiful in Colorado. I will be fine here." Catherine hugged her father tightly. "Write to us, and if you ever need anything, I know, but I will be okay, Kathy. For the first time in years, I actually believe that." The journey to Colorado took 3 weeks, traveling in a covered wagon with all their possessions, little Jack sitting between them and pointing excitedly at everything they passed. They arrived in Pueblo in late September of 1877, when the aspens were turning gold and the air had the crisp bite of autumn. The land Jack had claimed was beautiful, a valley with a creek running through it, surrounded by mountains, with rich grazing land and timber for building. Cole stood looking at it all, and Catherine saw tears running down his cheeks. "He knew," Cole whispered. "He knew exactly what I would love." They spent the first winter in a small cabin on the property, and Cole began building their ranch house in the spring. Catherine, who had learned she was pregnant again, helped as much as she could, watching their dream take shape board by board. Neighbors from nearby ranches came to help with the barn raising, and Catherine cooked for all of them, forming new friendships in this new place. Their daughter was born in August of 1878, during a cool, clear night when the stars seemed close enough to touch. They named her Grace, because she seemed like a gift of grace after all they had been through. Jack, now 3 years old, was fascinated by his baby sister and appointed himself her protector. The ranch prospered. Cole's skill with cattle and his reputation for honesty brought him success, and within a few years, they had one of the most respected ranches in the region. They added onto the house, hired ranch hands, and built a life that was everything Jack Davidson had dreamed of and more. Letters came regularly from Thomas Miller, full of news about Abilene and assurances that he was well. He had started attending church, had made amends with people he had wronged, and was living a quiet, sober life. Catherine was grateful for his transformation, even as she sometimes grieved for the years of her youth that had been lost to his drinking and gambling. In the spring of 1881, when Jack was almost 6 and Grace was 2, Catherine was hanging laundry when she saw a rider approaching. As he got closer, her heart leaped with recognition. It was her father, but something was wrong. He was riding slumped in the saddle, and when he dismounted, she saw how thin he had become, how gray his skin looked. "Papa," she ran to him, and he embraced her weakly. "I am sick, Kathy," he said simply. "The doctor says it is my heart. I do not have much time left, and I wanted to see you and meet my grandchildren before I go." Cole helped Thomas into the house, and they made him comfortable in the spare bedroom. Over the next few weeks, Thomas Miller got to know his grandson and granddaughter, telling them stories of their mother as a little girl, of their grandmother who had died before they were born. He apologized to Catherine over and over for the pain he had caused her, and she forgave him every time, holding his hand and telling him she loved him. "You gave me the greatest gift," he told Cole one afternoon. "You gave my daughter the life she deserved. I will go to my grave grateful for that." "You gave me Catherine," Cole replied. "Without you, I never would have met her, so in a way, sir, I am grateful to you too." Thomas Miller died peacefully in his sleep one morning in June with Catherine and Cole at his side. They buried him on a hillside overlooking the ranch, with a view of the mountains he had come to love during his last weeks. At the funeral, Jack stood solemnly beside his mother, and Grace, not quite understanding, picked wildflowers to lay on the grave. After her father's death, Catherine found herself reflecting on how far they had all come. From that terrible night in the saloon when her future seemed so dark, to this beautiful ranch where her children played and laughed, where she woke up every morning beside a man who loved her more than life itself. The journey had been hard, marked by loss and grief, but also by love and redemption. The years continued to pass, marked by the rhythms of ranch life, having season roundups, harsh winters, and glorious summers. Jack grew tall and strong, learning ranching from his father and books from his mother, who taught him to read and write and do figures. Grace was bright and fearless, climbing trees and riding horses almost before she could walk properly. In 1883, Catherine gave birth to twin boys, Samuel and Daniel, who kept everyone busy with their endless energy and mischief. Cole and Catherine's love deepened with each passing year. They still stole moments alone when they could, walks by the creek at sunset, sitting together on the porch after the children were asleep, dancing in the kitchen while supper cooked. Cole never stopped looking at her like she was the most precious thing in his world, and Catherine never stopped thanking God for the cowboy who had given up everything to set her free. One evening in the summer of 1888, when Jack was 13, Grace was 10, and the twins were 5, the family sat together on the porch watching the sun set over the mountains. Cole had his arm around Catherine, and the children were arguing good-naturedly about whose turn it was to feed the chickens in the morning. "Tell us again how you and Mama met," Grace said, as she often did. She loved the story of her parents' courtship, though they always edited out the darker parts for the children's sake. Cole smiled and launched into the tale, making it sound like a grand adventure. Catherine listened, watching her children's faces, and felt a surge of overwhelming gratitude. She thought of that terrified young woman standing in a saloon doorway, believing her life was over. She thought of the cowboy who had seen her fear and decided to help, not for any reward but simply because it was right. "The moral of the story," Cole concluded, winking at Catherine, "is that sometimes the worst moments of our lives lead to the best things that ever happened to us." "And that Mama is the bravest person in the world," Jack added. "And that Papa is the most romantic," Grace sighed dramatically. The twins just wanted to know if there had been any gunfights, which made everyone laugh. That night, after the children were finally asleep, Catherine and Cole lay in bed talking quietly. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked. "Giving up that money, staying here instead of moving on?" Cole pulled her close. "Not for 1 second. Everything good in my life came from that choice. You, our children, this ranch, all of it. Jack would have been proud of what we built with his gift." "I think he would have loved you as a brother-in-law," Catherine said. "And he would have adored the children. I like to think he knows somehow that he is watching over all of us." Cole kissed her forehead. "I love you, Catherine Davidson, more today than yesterday, less than tomorrow." "That is terribly poetic for a cowboy," she teased. "I learned from the best." "You have been teaching me about love and grace and second chances for 14 years now." In 1892, when Jack was 17, a young woman named Emily from a neighboring ranch caught his eye, and Cole and Catherine watched their eldest son experience first love with all its joy and awkwardness. Grace announced she wanted to be a teacher and began studying even harder. The twins were inseparable, always getting into trouble together and talking their way out of it with matching innocent expressions. The ranch continued to grow and prosper. Cole's original dream of owning land and cattle had been realized beyond anything he had imagined, but he always said his real fortune was his family. Catherine managed the household, kept the books, hosted gatherings for their neighbors, and raised their children with firm love and gentle wisdom. In 1895, Jack married Emily in a beautiful ceremony at the ranch, and Cole and Catherine became parents-in-law. Watching their son pledge his love reminded them both of their own wedding day, and they held hands throughout the ceremony, remembering. "We have built something lasting," Cole whispered to Catherine during the reception. "Not just this ranch, but a family, a legacy. Children who know they are loved, who understand the value of hard work and kindness and standing up for what is right." "Jack would be proud," Catherine said, referring to Cole's brother as she often did. "Your parents would be proud, my mother would be proud." "I am proud," Cole said simply, "of you, of our children, of everything we have created together. You are my heart, Catherine. You always have been from that very first day." In the spring of 1896, Catherine discovered she was pregnant again at age 44, which surprised them both. "I thought we were done," she said, laughing and a little nervous. "Apparently God has other plans," Cole replied, his face breaking into a wide grin. "Another blessing to add to all the others." Their youngest daughter was born that November, and they named her Hope, because she was unexpected and perfect and represented the hope that had sustained them through all their trials. The older children doted on her, and Catherine often found Jack's wife Emily helping with the baby, good practice for when she and Jack had children of their own. As the century drew to a close, the Davidson Ranch was known throughout Colorado as one of the finest operations in the territory. But more than that, it was known as a place of hospitality and kindness, where a traveler could always find a meal and a bed, where neighbors helped one another, where children were raised with love and discipline in equal measure. On their 25th wedding anniversary in 1899, Cole surprised Catherine with a trip to Denver, leaving the older children in charge of the ranch and the younger ones. They stayed in a fine hotel, ate in restaurants, and attended a theater performance, luxuries they rarely enjoyed on the ranch. But the best moment came when Cole gave Catherine a locket containing tiny photographs of all their children. "25 years ago, I gave up my savings to buy your freedom," he said as he fastened the locket around her neck. "Best investment I ever made. You have given me 5 beautiful children, a lifetime of love, and more happiness than any man deserves. I would do it all again in a heartbeat." Catherine kissed him, tears streaming down her face. "You did not buy my freedom, Cole. You gave me the choice to be free. And I chose you every day since then. I will choose you every day for the rest of my life." The new century arrived with celebration and hope. Jack and Emily had their first child, making Cole and Catherine grandparents. Grace graduated from teaching college and took a position at the local school. The twins, now 17, were skilled ranchers who could handle any aspect of the operation. Hope was a bright, curious 4-year-old who followed her father everywhere, asking endless questions that Cole answered with unfailing patience. In the summer of 1902, a young cowboy showed up at the ranch looking for work. He was travel-worn and weary, carrying all his possessions in a worn saddlebag. Catherine, watching from the porch, saw Cole talk with him, then shake his hand and direct him to the bunkhouse. That evening, Cole told her the young man's story. He had been saving money to marry his sweetheart, but his father had gambled it all away, and now he was trying to earn it back. "I gave him a job," Cole said. "Good wages, honest work. Told him if he works hard, he can save what he needs within a year." Catherine smiled, because of course Cole had helped him. It was who Cole was, who he had always been, a man who saw someone in trouble and offered a hand up. It was the quality she had fallen in love with all those years ago, and it was the quality their children had inherited. As they stood on the porch that evening, watching the sun paint the mountains gold and pink, Catherine leaned against her husband and thought about the incredible journey they had traveled together. From that smoky saloon where her life had seemed over, to this beautiful ranch where she was surrounded by love and laughter and the legacy they had built together. "What are you thinking?" Cole asked, his arm tightening around her waist. "I am thinking that I am the luckiest woman in the world. That terrible night in Abilene felt like the end of everything, but it was really the beginning. You saved me, Cole, not just from Thornton, but from a life without love, without purpose, without joy." "We saved each other," Cole corrected gently. "You gave me a reason to stop drifting, a home to build, a family to love. You healed the grief I carried over losing Jack. You made me into the man I always wanted to be." They stood together as the stars began to appear one by one in the darkening sky. From inside the house came the sounds of their family. Hope singing a song Grace was teaching her, the twins arguing about something, Emily laughing at whatever Jack had just said. It was the sound of love, of life fully lived, of a family bound together by more than blood, by choice, by commitment, by the enduring power of a love that had begun in desperation and grown into something beautiful and lasting. "I love you," Catherine whispered, the words as true now as they had been on their wedding day as they would be every day for the rest of their lives. "I love you too," Cole replied, kissing her softly. "Always have, always will." And under the vast Colorado sky, surrounded by the life they had built together, they held each other close and counted their blessings, children and grandchildren, land and cattle, but most of all, the love that had transformed them both and proved that even the darkest night could lead to the brightest dawn. They had weathered storms and celebrated triumphs, endured losses and welcomed new life, and through it all, their love had remained constant, a foundation upon which everything else was built. The Davidson Ranch would continue for generations, passed down through their children and their children's children. But the true legacy was not the land or the buildings or even the cattle. The true legacy was the story of how a cowboy with nothing but integrity and courage had freed a woman from bondage, and how together they had built a life of purpose, passion, and enduring love. It was a story their grandchildren would tell their own grandchildren, a reminder that one act of kindness, one moment of courage, one choice to love could change everything. As the years rolled on into the new century, Cole and Catherine grew old together, their love deepening with every season that passed. They watched their children become parents and then grandparents themselves. They saw the ranch expand and evolve while holding true to the values they had instilled from the beginning: hard work, integrity, kindness, and family above all else. They never forgot where they came from, the trials they had endured, or the grace that had brought them through. And they never stopped being grateful for that August evening in 1874, when a frightened young woman and a compassionate cowboy had found each other in a dusty Kansas town, and love had changed both their lives forever. Their story became legend in those parts, not the sanitized version they told the children, but the true story of gambling debts and forced marriages, of a stranger's sacrifice and a woman's courage, of how love could bloom even in the darkest soil and grow strong enough to withstand any storm. It was a story of redemption and second chances, of faith rewarded and hope fulfilled. And when Cole Davidson finally passed away in 1925 at the age of 78, with Catherine holding his hand just as she had held her father's years before, his last words were, "Best investment I ever made." Catherine knew he was not talking about cattle or land. He was talking about that day 51 years earlier when he had given up everything he owned to set her free, and in doing so, had found his own freedom and the love of his life. Catherine lived another 3 years, surrounded by children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, all of them touched by the legacy of love she and Cole had created. When she died peacefully in her sleep in 1928 at the age of 76, they buried her next to Cole on the hillside overlooking the ranch, with the mountains standing eternal watch over their final resting place. The inscription on their shared headstone reads simply, "Cole and Catherine Davidson. Together in life, together in death, together in love forever." And below that, added by their children, "He set her free and she made him whole." It was the perfect epitaph for a perfect love story, one that had begun with a gambling debt and a cowboy's sacrifice, and had blossomed into a lifetime of joy, partnership, and enduring devotion. They had faced every challenge together, celebrated every triumph together, and built a legacy that would endure for generations. Their love story proved that sometimes the darkest moments lead to the greatest blessings, that courage and kindness can change the world, and that true love, once found, lasts forever.